So I want to ask you, you talked about this new urgency with Donald Trump. I think a cynic might say, he's been talking this way the whole time. What did you learn about this president in the last week and a half that you didn't know before?
So I kept talking about the president's racism, the way he would talk about Mexicans and immigrants and African Americans and Muslims and anyone who didn't conform to the majority of this country and what they look like or who they pray to or who they love. And I've been warning, look, this doesn't just offend us, it's going to change us, and there are real consequences to people's lives. Well, that came home for me on August 3rd, and it came to this community, literally drove 600 miles to come to this community. And so that cannot but change me, change El Paso, and I hope change the country for the better, to understand in no uncertain terms what is happening. And I don't know how to describe it better than this. There's just an urgency and a fire within me right now to take this right to the source of what happened in this community. And as you know, there have been so many who've been asking these open questions. How does this happen? Why would it happen? Is it video games? Is it mental health care? What is it that's going on in this country right now? Is it both sides? No, it is our lack of any sensible gun laws. It is the open racism, and it is the commander-in-chief of this country who has directed the hatred and the scorn and the violence to communities like mine. And I've got to call that out and call attention to it. I want to wake us up, or I'm confident we as a country are going to die in our sleep. And any hope we will have of realizing that idea of America, that everyone has a place in this country, that will die with this moment as well. And so, what changes? I'm going to Mississippi. When we were talking about what's next in the campaign, I said, I don't know if this works. I don't know where Mississippi is in the nominating process. That community is terrified in Jackson County right now after what this administration and this president's done. Let's go to them.
You talked in your speech about that this requires more from everybody. I wonder what you think this requires both from your fellow candidates and, you've been critical of how this race and this president have been covered. What do you think it requires from those of us who are covering this?
It's hard in these debates where you're rewarded for, practiced attack lines, where you have these canned breakout moments where you're in 30 seconds required to answer a complex issue that may have been 300 years in the making, when the ritual and the performance and the theater of a presidential campaign that is so alien to the day-to-day lives of our fellow Americans, when that overwhelms the real discussions and conversations and urgency that we should have about this moment, when we lose sight of the fact that it is Donald Trump and everything that he's doing to this country right now that is the single gravest threat to America, we let each other down. We let this country down. And we don't meet the urgency of this moment. When members of the press ask, is the president racist? That cannot be beyond the shadow of a doubt anymore. And the president himself has made that case for all of us. To send her back. The Mexicans are rapists and criminals, the predators, the animals, the infestation, the invasion. That's very clear. And if we don't call things by their right name, if we don't see clearly, if we don't act decisively, we'll lose this. And I'm very afraid that's the point this country is at right now.
You propose one more? Can I get like 1.5? You propose a mandatory assault weapon buyback.
Yeah.
We're in a country that can't pass background checks.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
I'm confident, having listened to so many people, having been inspired by Moms Demand Action, students who are leading these walkouts from high schools like El Paso High behind us, or the marches for our lives, that the political will exists in this country. And that political will, those people will form the pressure necessary not only to ensure that we have red flag laws and universal background checks and the sale of assault weapons, but that we buy those assault weapons off the streets. There's no reason you should have an AK-47 or an AR-15. Those weapons were designed to kill people on a battlefield. And talking to the combat doctors who work at William Beaumont Army Medical Center but tended to the victims at Del Sol and UMC, they're seeing battlefield injuries here in what is one of the safest communities in the United States of America. I know, or I have an appreciation for how politically difficult that will be to accomplish and what it might do to my prospects as a candidate. But at this moment, if there ever was a moment to speak clearly, it is now, and I've got to do that. And so we are throwing all political or polling caution to the wind. We're going to do the right thing for our kids, for your kids, for this country, and make sure that at this moment of truth, we stood up and were counted on the issues that mattered most.
In terms of the campaign, a couple of months ago, you came out and said, sort of tactically the way you were doing things wasn't working. You needed to take your message more broadly. Now you're talking about making another shift about how you're going to go out and talk to people. How would you make a determination if this doesn't work either? I mean, like, what do you, if you do this for 2 months and you're in the same spot you are now, what do you do?
The spot is changing all the time. I feel like I have an extraordinary opportunity to take this fight directly to Donald Trump, to speak in no uncertain terms about the cost and the consequence of Donald Trump, to go to communities like mine that have been devastated and vilified and demonized and harmed by Donald Trump, and to lift them up, and to bring in Americans who are not now and maybe never were part of the conversation, never had a seat at the table. I feel so strongly about doing that. So excited to hear what's on the minds of my fellow Americans that I'm just going to go out and do that and continue to do that, and continue to reflect what I hear, to reflect the power and the strength and the resiliency and resolve of El Paso, but to do that for other communities across the country as well. That's my contribution to this country at this moment, and I'm going to do everything I can to be there for my community, to be there for my family, to be there for America, and that's what I'm doing.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.